welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video, and welcome to a video where I talk about books that made me cry. I don't know about you, but I personally love a good cry when it comes to a book. I feel like it's very cathartic. Sometimes I just need it, and the only way that I can release is by reading sad books about sad lives, and sometimes I'm okay with that. The great thing about this video is it is a collaboration with a bunch of other booktubers, all talking about books that made us cry. So I'm going to just quickly go over all the people that collaborated in this particular video concept, and then we will go into all the books that made me cry recently. So the list of people for this round is, of course, Becky from Beck X Reads. She's the one that invited all of us together to do this collaboration, so thank you again for thinking of me. Then we have Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life, Daphne from Being Daphne, Jackie from First Lady Reads, Jen from The Book Refuge, Joanna from My Cozy Bookspace, Lizzle from Lizzle Loves Books, Michelle from Michelle's Library, and lastly, Neva from Reads Whenever. So of course, I highly recommend that you go and check out all of the booktubers mentioned in today's video. Check out their videos as well as check out their channel, subscribe, show them all the love. But without further ado, let's talk about all the books that I have cried from recently. So I feel like most of the books that I chose are rather recent, from the last 1 to 2 years, but I did decide to choose the very first book that I can remember in recent history that has made me cry, and this was about 3.5 years ago that I read this book, and it completely broke me. I still remember the moment reading this book, and I walked out to my husband with the chapter still left to go, and I was sobbing, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not, and I'm not even done with it yet." And then I promptly went and watched the movie and cried some more. So of course, I'm talking about 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. This book, listen, I don't read a lot of YA anymore, but this book still holds a special place in my heart. I knew what I was getting into when I read this book, and still it broke me. It broke me, it pulled me in, it made me love these characters, only just to break my heart in the end. And oh my goodness, I was not prepared for it. I read this physically at the time, and I just remember like teardrops falling onto my book page, and I was really going through it. I was struggling, but I have such fond memories from this book because of that, and I'm so glad that I read it. I do need to do a reread of this and see if it's still as impactful the second time as it was the first, but I'm kind of scared of tainting my good memories of this book. But if you don't know what this is about, this follows two young teenagers who are living and dying, unfortunately, from cystic fibrosis. They are both in the hospital with really bad spells of the disease at the moment, and people with cystic fibrosis are very contagious to each other, and they cannot be more than 6 feet apart from each other. But these two characters end up falling in love, and they decide to take back one more foot. And it's beautiful. It is a sad book about sick people, so keep that in mind, but such a good one. Okay, up next we have The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This book literally broke me. I was not prepared for the level of hurt and pain this book was going to cause me, especially because the first 2 books in the series didn't hurt me like this. But I feel like this one is definitely different than all of the other books in the series. Definitely more heartfelt, a little bit more about the harder topics of the male-female lead's life than it is about the romance, but I still really love this book. It is my favorite out of the series. I think it is so fantastic. This one follows Anna and Quan. Anna is in a relationship currently with a man that decides he wants to have an open relationship, see what else is out there before settling down to marry her, and she decides, well, if you're gonna have a relationship outside of this relationship, then so am I. She starts trying to get into a one-night stand with a man named Quan, and these one-night stands get failed over and over and over again, but during those time of the failed one-night stands, they end up creating a relationship, and it is just so beautiful. And the relationship itself is not sad. However, Anna is going through a huge shift in her family dynamics because her father is very sick, and it deals a lot with that topic. So if you have triggers of sick family members, I would not recommend this one, but I loved it so much. It was very nuanced, it was very layered, and I just had such a wonderful time reading this book, and it literally made me sob. Up next, I want to talk about 2 books that I read at the end of 2021 that ended up on my favorites of the year list. It was my favorite book of the year, and this book, I remember I was sitting in my room at like 2 o'clock in the morning sobbing over the last book in this series because I just had such an emotional attachment to these characters and this family that I was literally broken by the end. It broke me, and that is Surrender and Dominate by Amy Dawes. These look like hot, spicy, sexy sports romances, which they are, don't get me wrong, but somehow the level of emotional damage that this caused me is just absurd. These characters just had such a wonderful impact on my reading experience, and I still to this day think about this book all the time, and I cannot wait to do a reread. This one follows, I'm not gonna remember their names, Garrett Gareth and Sloane. Gareth, he exercises control in all aspects of his life. His family come to him to solve problems because he's very much in control at all times. Whereas Sloane is going through a very rough time in her life. She's coming out of a very messy marriage. She is now a single mother, and she has no control in her life. So one day, they stumble into the bedroom together, and they have a role reversal where now Sloane is in control of their sexual relationship, and Gareth gets to surrender. And it is, y'all, first of all, spicy, but I think the character dynamics and the arc that these two characters go on from the first book to the second is just absolutely phenomenal. This technically is books 4 and 5 in a series, but I highly recommend just picking up these ones. They can stand as standalones together, these two books, and I think that it is highly, highly worth it. So amazing. Up next, we have Magnolia Parks. This one made me cry for, I think, different reasons than maybe people are expecting. I didn't necessarily cry because I don't know how to explain my feelings over this book. Did I cry in this book multiple times? Yes. There were certain lines that just hit straight to the core. This is one of my most annotated books, as in like writing, highlights, tabs, the whole shebang. And there are definitely some things in here that made me extremely sad. But the ending, when I tell you that I read the ending of this book, cried, and then threw it, that's how I feel. This is the most toxic relationship I've ever read, I feel like, in a book, and it's so messy, and these characters are terrible for each other, but you cannot help but root for them, and when bad things happen, you can't help but shed a little tear. So I don't know if I recommend this one because I don't think I'll ever be the same. I am emotionally scarred from this one in more ways than one, so there's that one. I feel like I need to switch it up just a little bit and recommend We're Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. This is a memoir about Gabrielle Union's life, and this book, when I tell you, there is a specific scene in here that literally just, I had to take a step away. I was just crying too hard. I will go ahead and let you know that the scene that I am referring to does speak very openly about her sexual assault and rape. So if that is not something that you're comfortable reading, I do not recommend reading at least that portion of this book. There are so many other things talked about in here that are fantastic, but this book does have quite a few triggers, so be aware of that. It is about somebody's life, so I'm not going to say don't read it. I think it's fantastic, but it is very, very sad, and this book definitely did emotionally break me. I read this book feeling like I never related to a person more than I related to Gabrielle Union. A lot of her story is a lot like mine, and I felt very seen by this book, and I loved it so much. I definitely need to do a reread at some point, but it is so good and definitely brought on some tears. I'm going to talk about some non-traditional formats for books that made me cry. The first one being Orange by Ichiko Takano. This is a collection of manga that is about this group of friends who come into contact with a kid in school, and they get a note from their future selves saying that they need to do everything possible to save this particular friend, because if they don't, in the future, he will no longer be with them. And you follow their journey as they try to figure out how and what is necessary in order to save him, and truly what they're saving him from. It's very, very sad. Trigger warnings for suicide, so just be aware of that, but this one definitely did make me cry. It's very rare that I read a manga or graphic novel that elicits emotion, but this is definitely one of them. The only other graphic novel that I have cried at is Heartstopper Volume 4. I feel like this particular installment in the graphic novel series is definitely darker than the other ones. This one deals with depression and self-harm as well as eating disorders, so be aware of that, but definitely ones that really just pulled at my heartstrings. I love Charlie and Nick so much, and so getting this far into the series and then reading about this character struggling with their mental health so much really did bring out some emotions in me. It's definitely one that I love so much and has a special place in my heart. I know that a lot of you out there also love Heartstopper, so this one is not a big surprise, but definitely one that I truly, truly adore. Alright, moving on to probably one of the darkest romances that I've ever read, but man, when I tell you it's so good, but it hurts. And that is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I could also recommend The Wrong Heart by Jennifer Hartman. Both of those made me cry, but Jennifer Hartman does a way of writing books that are so deep and have depth to them, and you just can't help but fall in love with their characters, but you know that they're going through so much that you can't help but hurt for them as well. This one follows two characters who don't like each other very much. It is the sister and the sister's fiance, and they end up getting kidnapped, spent 3 weeks in captivity, being forced to do absolutely depraved things to each other, and when they get out and survive, they end up creating a relationship because they are the only two people that understand what they went through. It is very dark. Those 3 weeks are depicted on page, so please be aware of that, but Oh, this book was so beautifully written, so well done, such hard topics that were talked about but handled beautifully, and an absolutely stunning read, but definitely made me sob, for sure. Let's talk about an author that tends to pull on my heartstrings more than I would like, but I keep going back to her books because she writes amazing books, and that is, of course, Kennedy Ryan. I pulled the 2 books that have made me cry the most, but I'm pretty sure I've cried in almost every single one of her books that I've read from her at this point, and that is Before I Let Go and Long Shot. Before I Let Go is a second chance romance between 2 parents that have been divorced for a few years now, and they are rekindling their romance. And then Long Shot is definitely filled with a lot more trigger warnings. This one does have trigger warnings as well. I would just say check them before you read any of Kennedy Ryan's work. She tends to talk about harder topics, but this one follows Iris, and she is in a very abusive relationship with her husband at the time, and it is very much heavily depicted on page. I would say the first half of this book follows her experience with her husband, so it's very sad, very heartbreaking. Definitely one of those reads that you have to be ready to read, but so beautiful as well. I love Kennedy Ryan's work. She never disappoints when it comes to the sob factor. In every single one of her books I've cried, but these ones I have cried at the most. Up next, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This book holds a special place in my heart. I read this one physically. I don't read a lot of books physically nowadays, but I did read this one physically at the time, and I just remember sitting on my couch, hitting one particular scene in this book and absolutely just breaking down into hysterical sobs because it deals with a father-daughter relationship, and I'm really close to my dad, and something that was written in here about her father just really resonated with me, and it just broke me. It broke my heart. I love Emily Henry. I think that she has fantastic books. Her writing is just so compelling and easy to pick up and read. This is definitely, for me, the most emotional of the 3 books that she's written so far, and I'm so glad that I was able to read this one and love it, and I think about it quite fondly. All of these next ones are pretty much groups of authors that tend to make me cry every time. And this one I feel like is no surprise. If you like her books, she tends to pull at the heartstrings, and that is, of course, Colleen Hoover. So the ones that I chose that recently made me cry are It Ends With Us, which is probably one of her, if not her most popular book, and it definitely, for me, is worth the hype. I love it. It is very sad. It deals with an abusive relationship, so please go into that. This is not a romance. I don't go into it expecting a romance. It is very hard-hitting, and the last line before, like, the epilogue of this book, ooh, girl, when I tell you I was in hysterics. Then we have Ugly Love. It's exactly what it sounds like. The love is ugly, and therefore tears were shed. And then, of course, we have Reminders of Him, which is her newest one, other than It Starts With Us, which is the sequel to It Ends With Us. But this one, I think that something about the dynamic between mother and daughter relationships, and this mother going through as much as she did to get back to her daughter, really just, it hit something in me, and I cried like a baby. So definitely Colleen Hoover hits my emotional spots every time. Okay. The author with the most books here, Mr. T.J. Klune. He is depraved. I'm just kidding. He's fantastic. I had the opportunity with Mel and Clint to interview him, and I think that he is a wonderful human being. However, he likes pain, and I don't appreciate that, because when I tell you I pretty much cried in almost every single book I read by him, it's just unfair. But these are the ones that I think hit me the hardest. I will talk about these ones last because I don't even want to get into those ones because my heart will never be the same. But we have The House in the Cerulean Sea. I feel like everyone knows about this book. It definitely is a cozy, fun read, but it did make me shed a few tears at the end, and I really love this book so much. We also have Under the Whispering Door. I read this one rather recently. This one does deal with death and grief, so definitely a harder topic, and it definitely made me cry. I love these characters so much. T.J. Klune has a way of writing characters that make you care for them so much that you can't help but want the best for them, and this one did bring on some tears. Then we have Heat Wave by T.J. Klune. This is the last and final book in the Extraordinary series, and this one, I don't know, just following these characters for 3 books, falling in love with them and their personalities and their quirkiness, and seeing the ending of their story just brought on so much emotions for me, and I'm so glad that I read it. It was absolutely beautiful, wonderful, amazing, and I definitely did cry. I think I got my crying on camera, actually, in a vlog that I did. I'll leave it up in the cards above if you want to check it out, but it hurted me, okay? Hurted. But the one that hurt the most, the Green Creek series by T.J. Klune. I will never, ever in my life emotionally recover from the series. That is why I have not gone back and done a reread, because literally, I'm still broken. Every single book in the series, I reiterate, every single book in the series made me sob like a big old baby. That is unfair. That is cruel and unusual punishment. That requires jail time. Okay? I don't even want to talk about it. If you have not read the series, trust me when I say it. It's worth it. It is worth all the tears. It is worth every piece of anguish that I went through to finish the series, but it is very sad. It is very, very hard to read at times, but I love it so much. This is a book that follows gay werewolves. That's really all you need to know. Go in blind. I promise you, you won't be disappointed, but be ready with a tissue box for the sobbing, okay? You're welcome. I'm surprised it took me so long in this video to talk about this author because you guys already know that I love her. But yes, she's brought me to tears more times than I would like to admit, but the ones I'm going to talk about are the ones that I remember viscerally. Like, I could go back and grasp these days out of my past and still feel all the emotions. So let's talk about the less obvious one first. We have A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. The ending of this book, I was not prepared. Emotionally, physically, mentally. It still hurts me to think about the fact that she did this to me, because why? I think that she enjoys pain as well. And I don't appreciate that. I just don't. So, yeah, the ending of this book really did break me. I'm so glad that I immediately jumped into book 3, because I would not have been emotionally stable to live my life after this book. But love it so much. Such a good series. It's the best book in the series other than Silver Flames, which is also fantastic, but did not make me cry. But this one, ooh boy, that last chapter, not okay. And then, of course, the more obvious one, House of Earth and Blood, my favorite book of all time. When I tell you, it has been 3 years since I've read this book. And I still think about the day that I read this and sobbed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sobbing silently, though, because everybody in my house was asleep and I could not wake them with my absolute gut-wrenching, racking sobs that I was having. But I'm still not over it. 3 years later, I'm still not over it, and I don't know how or why she chooses to hurt us like this, but I will never, ever be the same. This book has an emotional impact on me that I don't think I'll ever forget. It is why it is my favorite book of all time, aside from the fact that it's fantastic and amazing and the writing is impeccable and the characters are freaking fantastic. But the ending of this book goes down in the history for one of the best written 200 pages I've ever read in my entire life. And I've read it now 3 times in total, and I still don't think I'm okay. So thank you very much for that. And the last and final book in this video is going to be the ending of a series that I didn't ever think that I was going to read, but boy, did she write these characters so well that by the end, tears were shed. And that is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, the last book in the Greenbone saga. And my heart was legitimately just broken. You spend upwards of 30 years with these characters, and by the time that you get to the end and you see how all of these characters pan out and where they end up and how they got there, it is just so emotionally taxing that when I got to the last, couple hundred pages, I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. You were physically going to hurt me. And she did not disappoint in the hurt factor. I did shed tears in multiple sections of the ending of this book, and I'm so glad that I read it. It was so good. It was so well written, and I'm so glad that I conquered my fear of reading this 700-page behemoth, because it was everything it could have been and more. I definitely think I grabbed more books for this video than I was supposed to, but there are so many books that have elicited so many great emotions for me that I just couldn't leave any of these out. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and did you cry? Are you a crier in books? Let me know that as well. And then, of course, let me know any books that you have been emotionally devastated by, so hopefully I can pick them up and be emotionally devastated with you. Of course, make sure to go and check out all of the collaborators on this video. Check out their videos of books that made them cry. I will be quickly going to watch all of those videos so I can get all the recommendations to have a good cry fest. I hope you do the same, but also make sure to subscribe and show them all the love. I appreciate you so much for coming to this video. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Thanks, baby. Turn it down like it's sweet and ready. Go slow, keep it nice and steady. Know that you've been